Final session of our international opportunities track here on day 2 of Pocket Gamer Connect's Digital Next. We have so far looked at the Latin America, specifically the Brazilian market. We have looked at the Middle East and North African region. And we are now going to do a panel that will take us to the end of the day with 4 experienced speakers from different markets around the world, going to give us an overview of some other markets that we haven't touched on yet this afternoon, and I know it's going to be really interesting. There's going to be some opportunities to find out an overview of some fantastic markets that we haven't covered yet at the event. So I would like to welcome to the virtual stage my panelists for the final kind of 40-50 minutes of the day. And if I think they're all here ready and being brought live. So I will be your moderator as we welcome to the track this afternoon. Artur Davydenko from Flyer One Ventures, Hugo Obi from Maliyo Games, Olivier Madibam from Kiro'o Games, and Alexis Bonte from Stillfront Group. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? And are you all in the Zoom right now? I think we've got everyone.
I can hear Dave. Hello.
Perfect.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. Thanks for joining me, guys. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So we're here. We've got a big task ahead of us. We are going to talk about the whole world. We're going to tell everyone about the games markets around the world. So here's what we'll do. I'll give a little bit of an overview, and then I'll invite you to introduce yourselves, and then we'll dive into some of those markets. So one of the themes of this conference has been about looking to the future and about looking to new possibilities, new technologies, new markets. And this is the perfect chance then here on this track to look at some of the parts of the world that we haven't spoken about yet here on Pocket Gamer Connect's Digital. We've got some, we've spoken about America and China earlier in the day, but there are other markets that are all going very quickly, and our attendees here this afternoon are going to give us some insight into those. So first, I'd like to invite my panelists to introduce themselves. Just give us a little bit of insight into yourself and your company before we dive into everything. Let me start here just with who's on my left, and we'll kind of go around the virtual room. Artur, can you give us a bit of an introduction to yourself, and then I'll move on and I'll take Olivier next. I think that's who I can see next.
Thank you for the opportunity, Dave. It's nice to meet you. So I'm Artur. I'm from Russia, and I've been working in the gaming development industry for 7 or 8 years in production and marketing of different types of games. Now I'm working as venture partner at Flyer One Ventures. We are investing in game developers from Eastern Europe, mostly from Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, and some near regions. We're focusing on mobile games and gaming services from the local teams.
Great, thank you. It's really interesting. Thank you very much, Artur. So Olivier, welcome. Where are you zooming to us from today?
Okay, so I'm from Cameroon, and I will share my screen very quickly to not lose time. I know so everyone see the screen? It's okay, good, quiet?
Oh, there we go. Yeah, just about. I think it's in kind of design mode at the moment, but yeah, I can see that.
No, it's good. It's good.
There we go. Perfect. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's just to So the thing is, I'm Olivier, founder of Kiro'o Games. We are a team of the first video game studio in Cameroon. We have designed Orion, the first African fantasy RPG in the history of video games, so we are in Wikipedia forever now. History forever. And for now, we are trying to build like a Pan-African cross-media ecosystem around our brands. We even have a bistro where geeks in Cameroon can come and eat and talk about our games. And we make mobile games now, fun games with outdoors, leisure with casual gameplay, and some African internet games that I will talk a little bit later when you will have questions about it. So that's us at Kiro'o Games.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That's great. And yes, we'll come to talk more about the market there. Well, that's a great oversight. Thank you. Hugo, I'll come to you next, please. Can you introduce yourself and your company to us?
Yeah, my name is Hugo Obi. I'm the founder of Maliyo Games. We're based in Lagos, Nigeria. We build free-to-play African-inspired games for mobile, Android and iOS. And at the moment, we're building the largest community of mobile game developers in the continent through the Game of Africa training program, where we're running a developer training program for entry-level game developers in Kenya, Nigeria, and Ghana. And we have over 500 learners within our community. And we're looking to expand into 10 African countries next year. So that's pretty much about me.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you very much. And Alexis, can you tell us a little bit about where you and Stillfront work and about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Very happy. So I'm calling from Stockholm. I'm Alexis Bonte. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Stillfront. And I was before that one of the founders of one of the 21 studios that are now part of Stillfront. And we're basically an alliance, a group of game studios across the world. Studios in India, in the Middle East, US, Europe, a bit everywhere. No studios in Africa yet, or Russia. So that's interesting. Watch this space. So I'm very, very interested in this call.
That's great. Thank you. And yes, like you, I'm during the course of the afternoon, slowly identifying places that I want to visit as soon as lockdown is released and I can travel again. So let's start here. One of the advantages of this session we've got here is that we're joined by people from all around the world, not just watching live now, but of course we record these sessions because not everyone's in the same time zone, and so people will be able to see it later. So we have an opportunity to give an overview of the game scene from areas all around the world. So I'd like to invite our panelists in turn to give us an insight into the game scene where they are. Now, I know that's a big topic and, we only have a little amount of time. So we're going to have to be pretty targeted here. Hugo, I'll start with you. Let's, if I may, let's talk a little bit about the sector where you are. Just like to know a little bit about what the opportunities are, what the biggest challenges are. There will be people watching this who don't know the region very well, but are open to the idea of finding out more about games in your sector. So let's go around in the room in turn and find out a little bit about the area. And Hugo, let's start with you.
Yeah, most certainly. Thank you very much. So one of the reasons why I went into gaming was because I saw an opportunity to access a global industry by acting locally. One of the, we're one of the early pioneers of African-inspired gaming, and essentially our vision was kind of like export African culture through gaming. Right. So thinking of Africa more as a producer of content rather than a consumer of content. And we sort of like pushed through that, and some of the early challenges that we faced was, finding competent talent locally. So when we started off back in 2012, we outsourced a lot of the development work that we did, whilst insourcing a lot of the creative pieces of the work that we did. And after a decade of being in the industry, or close to a decade of being in the industry, we realized that the market in itself hadn't changed. So there was still a significant lack of competent technical talent. We have a very large population in Nigeria. We're about 200 million. Across the continent, we're over 1 billion. We're one of the fastest growing mobile consumer markets in the world, with the fastest growing smartphone penetration markets in the world, very high dependency on mobile, and we're a mobile first market. So you would normally find people who have never used a computer in their lives before, but are very familiar with using a smartphone or a mobile phone. So I realized that, the gaming market is one of those markets that, cut across multiple geographies, across multiple cultures, and does not necessarily require very huge infrastructure to develop. So in terms of economic empowerment, it's one of those really easy to access industries where you can play within a global space. And we decided to kind of create an in-house curriculum to develop local talent because we wanted to solve our own hiring needs in terms of being able to identify local talents who can join the company and help us create fun content. And in the process of doing that, we sort of saw this bigger problem that we could solve. And that problem included obviously empowering people through education and skills acquisition. Empowering people through economic, giving them access to earning income, either as indie developers or working as freelancers. And at the same time, achieving our ultimate goal, which is ensuring that Africa is a net positive contributor of content within the gaming space, rather than like a net consumer. And this is the vision that we are trying to accomplish, and that's kind of like the space that we are working within.
That's great. That's really interesting. Am I right in thinking that there's a games expo that takes place in Nigeria? Isn't Wage in Lagos? Have I remembered that correctly? The West African Game Expo.
Yes, that is correct. This is from a couple of years ago. So this was before, but you are very correct. Yes.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you very much for that. That's like, well, I'm sure there'll be questions. And just to remind the audience that if you have questions for my panel, please do drop them into the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom, and I'll put them to the panel afterwards. Olivier, let's come to you next. Let's continue with Cameroon and and other observations you might have about the African continent. But based in Cameroon, what's your insight into the market, how big it is, and what the opportunities and challenges are? Oh, here we go. Perfect. Oh, you're muted, I think, Olivier, at the moment, but we can see your screen.
Okay, that's it. Sorry.
No, that's perfect. That looks great.
Okay, so just to give you some numbers, African numbers are in the future, in fact. Mm-hmm. So let's, for example, what do we have today? In 2021, I will use, for example, our experiment in Cameroon. We have one of our first monetizable game. We have 70,000 downloads. 1,400 USD revenue, but what we have is 67% of this revenue have been done by paying application with African mobile money. We think because the API to make mobile payment, seamless mobile payment in game are pretty new, and we are among, I think, one of the first. Other studios have succeeded, but among one of the first studios to succeed to integrate that. And what we see is we have 6.4% conversion rate in Cameroon. In Africa, if you succeed to make a seamless payment in a game with mobile money, you have this kind of conversion rate. And if we go to 2025 with data from the some telcos and other gaming platform, we have seen that there will be 250 million players. There will be a 4 billion valuation in the global sub-Saharan market. But the most interesting part will be in 2030, where there will be like Hugo said, we are very young on the continent. We will have 800 million young adults in Africa. Wow. Half of them will be connected to internet. 100 million of them, we have made a study with Huawei, will pay something in a game by mobile money, and it can give 1.3 billion USD per year only in the sub-Saharan region. This kind of number seems to be low if you put it in the Western space, because 1 billion in gaming for all the continent may seems low. But if you come with African charge, for example, if you see it as a Western studio, it's not enough. But if you have African team working for this kind of money, you make huge profits, because you will not use, even us, when we simulate our biggest studio vision with 115 people, we only have a burn rate of 150,000 USD per month. You see, so if you have to put it in a Western studio, it's become very bigger than that. And what are the challenges? The human resource, like Hugo said, you have to train your team yourself. But the challenge is not really the technical part, but mostly the human part, because you have to fix so many trauma people get before getting in your studio. And I think Hugo can understand what I'm talking about. You have people drawing, artists, when they come in your studio, they have been in a place where their family don't love the art, etc., etc. They have been mocked, so you have to give them trust in themselves again, beyond just to give them skill. You have low hardware. Just today, we are in a very technical challenge, because we have to retire all DLC of our mobile game because African players want to get everything in the first download. So you have this kind of stuff, and of course the funding. The funding part is hard because when you have to talk with investors, often they want to apply what they know in a Western market in an African one, and it's like you are doing Paris-Dakar run course. You know the Paris-Dakar where you are in the desert, you are jumping cliff in the desert, and you come to talk to an investor who want to make you do Formula One.
Right, right.
So he's when you are trying to explain, no, there we don't have good roads, so you have to do it like this. And he's like, whoa, we fund people who make high peaks of speed, but you cannot make Formula One in Africa. You will die in the sands. And you have this feeling that you have to lie to get the funding, and if you say the truth, no one wants to fund you, and it's often difficult. But things start to evolve a little bit. So that's what I have to say.
That's really interesting. And you give me a couple of things I want to come back and ask you about afterwards. But let's continue around the room and see where we are. Artur, let's talk about where you are. You're Ukraine and Russia and Eastern Europe. Can you tell us a little bit about the markets there? We haven't discussed that much this afternoon. What's your market overview and the opportunities and challenges where you are?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So it is known that the Russia is something like 50 to 70% of Eastern European market, not of Europe, but of Eastern European market in terms of gaming revenue. And it's been for the last like 3 to 5 years, it is known and it is good. PlayerX, Nextars, they are great guys. But if we're talking about growing opportunities, something like changing right now, it should be Ukraine, Belarus, and Poland. It will be another approximately 25% of Eastern European revenue. Together with Russia, it's 95%. So those 4 countries would be the most of the Eastern European gaming revenue. And the thing about Ukraine will be is that we have something like 70 to 80 gaming companies. We have approximately 100 of thousands of game dev specialists, not IT specialists. It would be like 7 or 8 times bigger, but game dev focused specialists. We have another 100 companies in Poland and Belarus together. And in those 3 countries, I have a number. Yeah, we have more than 2,000 of hundreds of game dev specialists. It's mostly engineers and artists, of course, and something about marketing. But it shows you that we have a lot of specialists which are working, of course, exporting our games into China, US, and Japan. So it would be our main export markets. And the interesting thing is that Ukraine is pretty big market, something like 50 million of people. And they start to push their games locally first. Belarus, it's 9 million people. It's something like London. Poland is also a big country, but a small market in terms of gamers. So we have small local numbers in terms of gamers. That's why we export first countries. We have a lot of engineers and artists because of the history of education in those countries. That's why we have a lot of specialists with average salary of $2,004 per month. Okay. Comparing to Africa, it's high. Comparing to Europe, it's still low, which is great. And if we're talking about challenges, I would highlight 3. So for Belarus, it's actually migrating process because of the political situation.
Right.
Top destinations, as far as I know, Ukraine and Poland. So Poland and Ukraine having a lot of incoming specialists, but they still don't have a lot of mobile gaming experience because it's old school PC first countries. Mm-hmm. So we lack of mobile UX specialists, mobile designers, mobile marketers, mobile producers who know about mobile games. And that would be the first challenge. And of course, the second challenge is it's in process of solving at the moment. There are a lot of funds that are want to know more about Ukraine, Belarus, and Poland, and it started to change. But of course, it's not like in UK and US at the moment. So I feel Oliver and Hugo a lot, and I'm trying to solve it, of course, with my fund. We'll see.
That's great. Thank you. Great overview. And yes, interesting, isn't it, that we could probably spend a whole afternoon talking about how the politics of a region affects the various educational or market, business market and so on. But Alexis, let's come to you. And I know that you and your team operate in a number of areas. So we could talk about several. Feel free to highlight the most important ones. I know that, for instance, that you have one of the top 3 grossing mobile games in India, for instance. But tell us a little bit about the areas where you operate. What are the opportunities and challenges?
Yeah, I mean, we're a Western. We're mostly a Western developer. So our number one market, like many developers here, is the US. For obvious reasons, it's almost close to half of our revenues comes from there. We have large studios there. So we have Storm 8. We have Super Free. With Kixeye, with Candy Writer. We actually now I think we're top 3 game right now, just came out. If you ever wanted to be a dog, then this is your chance. They've after BitLife, they've just launched Dog Life.
Okay.
So that's top 3 in the US right now. So that's really the number one market for us. If you look at the US, it's 22%, 23% of the gaming market. China is 26%. We have very little exposure in China. If you look at the market size in the US for all of mobile games, about $45 billion game markets. Obviously, that's huge. But then if you look at the growth in that market from 2017 and 2020, the average growth has been about 10% year on year. And actually, this last year, after the big peak that we had during COVID, it's been flat or slow decline or very, very slow growth. We expect the growth to resume again, going forward, but that's kind of interesting, and that's one of the reasons I think markets like Africa, Russia, or the market I wanted to talk to you about today, India, are super interesting. So in India, we have one of the recent studios that joined Stillfront is Moonfrog, and India is a huge market. So when we looked at it, and I was really interested, I don't know, I think it was Olivier or Hugo, I think both of you mentioned this, that you're not building games in Africa, just for the rest of the world. You're building games Africa for the local market, and also with kind of African content that could be interesting also for the rest of the world. And I thought that was really interesting. And if you look at it, most Western developers, the way that they've looked at a country like India, for example, has been more like, okay, let's develop cheaply in India because there's good, back-end developer talent, and maybe we'll do the front end somewhere else, and then so that we can sell externally. We were specifically looking for a studio that was very strong locally, very strong in the Indian market and Pakistan and all of that region. So that's why we went for Moonfrog. If you look at India right now, it's 300 million mobile gamers and growing. There's an average of 2 smartphones per household. 46% of the users have connections that are faster than 12 megabytes per second. So there's really decent connections. And if you look at the size of the market, okay, it's just 1% of the market. So of the total market, you're looking at more or less $1.8 billion market. So already relatively significant, but not huge. But it's grown 38% on average in the past few years. And that growth is basically staying stable. So extremely fast growing market. If you look at the Android devices, it's the number one market in the world in terms of downloads. The problem is monetization. And the reason we also went for Moonfrog is there are solutions to monetization. So there's something like a resale network where they're able to kind of, circumvent this, but that's kind of also going to catch up. So that's why we think we're, really interested in this talk and hearing out, Hugo and Olivier, because we feel that these markets that have, just that this massive audiences are a massive opportunity. Yeah, it will take a bit of time, but if you just think, India, and you fast forward 5 years, where it could be, if you have one of the top, I'm not even saying top 3, if you have one of the top 10 grossing studios in that market and you're able to stay there in 5 years time, you're a $1 billion plus company by yourself. So that's kind of what we see in terms of potential there.
That's amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very, very much for that. Do you know, I would like to take some questions from the audience at this point. And the reason is because, we're so limited on time, but one of the advantages of the people joining us today to watch what you guys have to say is that they can interact with you right now. So I'm going to not miss the opportunity to take those questions, if that's okay. So I'm going to come back to, firstly, I'll come to just a question that's just been recently asked, and I'll come to Artur with this. One of our attendees has said, in working in Eastern Europe, you're right next door to the Nordics. Do you view them as rivals or healthy competitors?
I like it. So they have the same picture. So Finland is 5 million gamers country.
Mm-hmm.
Sweden, I don't want to be rude, so I will share it with Alexis. But comparing to United States and China, it's small local countries. We see them as an example because they were first with Nokia. They were first with mobile games, with iPhone, and we're actually trying to catch them because not only Supercell, but Next Games, Digital Chocolate, they are masters, and we're trying to join this race. So it's definitely healthy competitors.
Good, that's interesting. I think that was a kind of specific for you, but I'll take this next question to everybody, and maybe again we'll start with Olivier perhaps, and then we'll kind of go around. Someone in the audience asked, are there any misconceptions that you would like the global market to know about your specific region?
We really want. We are really working hard with a studio like Hugo to erase this exotic view of our countries. Because there is this exotic view of Africa, or exotic of suffering, because that's the two misconceptions we often have to fight when we make advertising. And we are more in trying to make people see that Africa is more about Black Panther and Lion King. It's
right.
more about using our struggling story, not to show the struggle, but the inspiration. And there is a huge work for storytelling about it. And also, like I say, numbers of Africa in the future, but there is also a big opportunity because Tencent in China, right? They are not just gaming, they do gaming, and because of gaming, they started to invest in everything else.
Mm-hmm.
We think in Africa, that's the way to be studied. Like, if you are a big studio in Africa, you have to see the potential to become an investor of even African infrastructure or something that you can do in the Western countries and become like a foundation of countries where you will be economically huge. You see the valuation of Tencent, so you already have the example of how a gaming studio can become something bigger. And that's something we think we want to show as the empty space of Africa is the opportunity, not a problem. It's the opportunity to make everything from start. Again, that's what we want people to see.
That's good. That's good. Thank you. And that's Hugo. I'll come to you next with the same question, which is, with your Nigerian hat on. What are there any misconceptions that you would like our global viewers to understand about your region?
Yeah, I think that in my perspective, it's not everyone in Nigeria or everyone in Africa that actually wants to live the continent. Some of us love it here and are very happy to stay. I think what we want to do is to be part of a global society where we can actually make positive contribution. And a lot of the passionate creators that we work with, this is really what drives them. I think the motivations are essentially the same, just the ability to create. I think that the difference between us and people in other parts of the world is that failure is very expensive because there are no safety nets. There's no support. You're literally on your own. So, like with Olivier's example about the Paris-Dakar, there are no helicopters, there are no emergency, phones. No one is going to come save you. So if you do break down in the middle of the desert, you're on your own. That's the difference. Right. Whereas, our compatriots in other parts of the world, that like rescue helicopters, they've got navigation systems, they've got support vehicles in the back. So, like failure isn't as disastrous. And I think like it's not the level playing field. Regardless, like there are a bunch of crazy people out there who are happy to go on this journey and experiment. But I think like what we have in common is much greater in terms of just our pure desire to create. I mean, like with the program that we have created as an example, we have first-time game developers. These are mostly people who have computer science backgrounds, who have a lot of technical knowledge, but have never been in an organized environment where they can actually learn something that they are, passionate about just from a hobby standpoint. I mean, the best jobs in the world are the ones that you're willing to do even if you're not being paid, right?
Right.
And just organizing an environment like that and providing people with the tools to create and just watch their eyes light up and just look at them, like just see the world differently. Like I think that's the most powerful thing that we've been able to do. And we've been able to do it with the support of like great partners. And I think like, this is that kind of like knowledge exchange where we can have access and we can look at partnerships and collaborations and we can do knowledge sharing so that we can also, like move ahead and then create our own safety nets, build our own infrastructure, create our own content, build our own local economy. Because, Alexis said around building, you can build an African economy. We can be the largest content. I mean, our vision is very simple. We want to be the largest content distributor or gaming content suppliers within the continent, right? That's our primary objective. And, like we are passionate creators. You can see it in our music. You can see it in our art, you can see it in our fashion. And, like gaming just enables us to combine art and technology. And, we have the capabilities to do that.
That's great. In fact, I'm glad you mentioned the word passion there, because that's exactly what I was thinking when you were talking about people getting into games and the opportunity to work in something that they love. Actually, you've made me think that I do want to ask a question about kind of careers in the various regions. But first, I'll come to Alexis and give you a chance to tell us, about any misconceptions around the markets you work in, maybe around India, that you want to dispel.
I think it's a bit difficult for me to talk about misconceptions because I'm working, in the markets that most people know, But I think one misconception that maybe you guys have, Hugo and Olivier, and is actually the cost of failure in some markets, some European markets is pretty bad as well, especially Spain and all that, because the bankruptcy laws are pretty tough. There's some countries where basically if you go bankrupt, like in Spain, your life is over. But I wouldn't want to compare that with what you guys have to go through. But I just want to say that not every country is the US. that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. But no, I think honestly, it's much more interesting to listen to what Artur and Olivier and Hugo have to say about this particular subject.
No, that's great, thank you. And that's we'll take that away as a quote from this afternoon. Not every country is the US, and that's worth remembering. I think actually kind of one of the themes of the afternoon, right? The reason why we've covering all these areas. So thank you for that. We do have a couple of other questions, but I wanted just to dive in there. I think it was something that maybe Olivier said earlier on, but it was about the games as a career, and I know that's something that we've spoken on here about. Starting the studios and the kind of the building the games economy. Can I get a sense from all of you perhaps about in the regions where you operate, is being a game developer a career that is encouraged or frowned on? Are there support, are there education for that? Is it something that I think maybe you kind of touched on this, but that perhaps families don't encourage people to go into? What is the careers path, and do people, is it a desirable something that people can get an education in and take on? I don't know. Let's Hugo, maybe just go to you briefly, and then we'll see what everyone else has to say on that.
So previously, like artistic careers were frowned upon until like all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we've seen a couple of big music superstars, and everybody's kind of like understanding that this is actually a product that is consumed because they themselves consume it. We've also seen the same thing in tech. where like as startups, you work on your computers, you go to this like co-creation hubs, and you have all of this kind of like fancy ideas, and like the traditionalists would think, why don't you just go work in a bank rather than building some kind of like application that you want people to use to do the same thing? Aren't you best served working in an FMCG where you can actually earn a living? And then 5 years down the line, they're a unicorn. And now if you have a child who wants to like build applications or like work in the creative sector, you want to push them on, because like it's literally, I think the most important thing here is that people are looking for economic means. Traditionally within Africa, there is an expectation for you to get an education, but once you've gotten that, like you're literally on your own. And we're seeing a lot of examples of like music artists, creators, movie producers, having fame, like being showcased on some of the world's biggest medias, being on huge stages, attending, huge global forums, and being being seen as thought leaders, not just pure entertainers. So that mind shift, I think, has changed. And in terms of an actual career path, I think like there is, Olivier touched on this, in terms of the economic power of the dollar. An average game developer in Nigeria can live very comfortably with $200 to $300 in revenue per month, right? Our European counterparts, that wouldn't even cover their monthly travel costs. So, like actually having access and just being empowered and being able to earn, I think it's the most important thing, because, jobs are not being created by the traditional industries. You're seeing a lot of like economic stagnation across the board, and this sort of like new avenues where individuals who have degrees of gone through university are not able to get like just traditional jobs. Just being able to like be self-employed and be self-empowered is kind of like the way to the future right now.
That's interesting. Alexis, sorry, did you want to leap in there? I saw you.
Yeah, I wanted to leap in there because I wanted to rebound on the $300, story and all that. So very few people know that actually I started my games career, after lastminute.com and all that in Romania, in 2007, when there were exactly 0 game studios in Romania. I think EA had some sort of outsourcing thing there, maybe Gameloft, but that was it. There was like no gaming studio. Games was not a career in Romania, and the beginning salaries of the developers there at the beginning, there was a good mathematics preparation there, and so there was good computer science programs and all that. But I think the average wage was maybe not $300 a month, but you're looking maybe like a really top developer, would maybe get $800, $900, maybe $1,000 a month, which compared to other European countries was extremely low. Fast forward, even today, but fast forward 10 years, and they were making more than the Spanish developers. Right. That was the salary of Romanian developers. And now if you're a game developer in Romania, that's more than a career choice. You have an incredible life. Right. And all it takes is one success story. So Republic Labs, which was my studio there, was successful, did well very soon. A few people actually left that studio, started other studios that also had their exits and all that. And you just create a whole ecosystem very, very quickly. And now it's an extremely competitive marketplace. But basically what I wanted to say is that it doesn't matter where you start your game studio. All that you need is one success story, one role model, and then you build an ecosystem and you create something.
Yeah. No, definitely. We as always, we've kind of come to the end of the time and we've barely scratched the surface, but I want to give the other guys a chance to dive in and comment on that. Artur, what's your kind of impression of the next generation of talent, if you like, in the areas where you work in kind of Russia and Eastern Europe? Are people choosing to go into games creation as a career?
Yeah, it's like Alexis said, it's changed with a few examples. Belarus and Wargaming, Russia and PlayerX, Poland and CD Projekt, and now Ukraine is waiting for their first unicorn. It's not still yet. In Russia, we have the first traditional university, High School of Economics. They have their own gaming program, like the pure 2 years program with the business focused and design focused programs. We're still engineers first market. We have a lot of engineers. We'll have a lot of tech universities, like dozens of them in different cities. We lack of marketing and monetization specialists, of course. I feel that the UK, Europe, United States, they are stronger than us in marketing and monetization, and we like to teach, we like to learn, and that's why a lot of game developers work with European and States publishers. And I guess once they will learn this, like this magic of monetization and marketing, we will see more success stories. Comparing to big telecom or banking industries, we're still not the first place to work in. Right. So traditional families would be happy if their boys and girls would work in big banking or big telecom companies, because we're pretty strong in terms of those services in our countries. Gaming becoming a thing, and I guess in 5 years it will be comparing to traditional IT companies, because in terms of salaries, we're pretty hot right now. It's too high as I see it, but it's good for the specialists. They will earn what they deserve.
That's good, thank you. And then Olivier, yeah, you I think you started me thinking about this earlier on, but did you want to chip in on that and talk a little bit about the education in your region as a career path?
Yes, before Kiro'o Games in Cameroon, gaming was just a joke. When we said that we wanted to open a video game studio back in the days, some people thought that we had literally mental illness. But right now, since we exist and since we have a lot of international recognition, even just the press telling about us, parents start to encourage their kids around us to draw, to learn game coding. But I think video game is an elite place everywhere in the world. It's really hard to see a country with 1 million game coders somewhere. And I think it will not happen. It's an elite place to make video games. You will not make 1 million people design games in one country. But what I think is you can have, it's a little bit like soccer. So you can have a little group of people designing, creating games, but you build a total industry around it with sound designers, with people building resources, with people making translation, with even people giving you food, you know, and yeah, but it's on the good way to become something because of the job we are doing with other African studios.
That's great, thank you. I realized that we're kind of out of time, and I've maybe only touched on like 3 questions that I wanted to ask you guys. So what I suggest is that after this, I'd like to sort of maybe pick this up with you again by email, and we'll do a feature on the website about the different regions. I think that could be quite an interesting thing to do. So let's follow up and do that, and we'll do an article where people can follow up on pocketgamer.biz and find out a little bit more about some of these other questions we've got here. If folk that are attending the conference today would like to find out more from you guys about your business or about working in the region, what's the best way to get in touch with you? Is it all through? Are you all on Meet to Match right now, or in the Discord, or what's the best way to kind of get hold of you?
Alexis at stillfront.com.
There we go. Alexis at stillfront.com. Anyone?
Meet to Match on Twitter for me, Madibam, Olivier, just, and LinkedIn too.
And LinkedIn, of course, yeah.
We're already on LinkedIn together.
Yeah, LinkedIn as well. I'm also on Meet to Match, and like we've got a contact form on our website, Maliyo.com, and that works.
Perfect. Artur, same for you?
Yeah, same for me. Facebook, LinkedIn, and Meet and Match.
Great. Well, look, thank you very much. I'm sorry we've run out of time, and you know, we could probably dedicate an entire afternoon to going through to each individual territory, which we'll do that. But look, thank you very much. A round of applause on behalf of the people watching and those who will be watching the recording as well, because we're making sure that everyone can see it from the different time zones. Thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully, we'll have you back in person next year. Let's do it in person. So thank you for that, and we're at the end of the day here. So thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.